Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking closely at the allegations around Sean Diddy Combs. You sent us this CNN video and transcript, and it looks like it goes pretty deep into this newly surfaced footage, surveillance footage, and multiple lawsuits. This isn't just about like one event, though, right? It's about patterns of potential abuse and how power dynamics work in the music industry, the entertainment industry, and what happens when someone at Diddy's level faces these kinds of accusations.
Yeah, it's a story that kind of plays out on a lot of different levels, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you have just the immediate shock of seeing that surveillance footage and then the whole legal side of it with the lawsuits. And then, yeah, the bigger question of how does the music industry, how does society in general respond to allegations like this, especially against someone so powerful?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so right off the bat, that footage, that surveillance footage from that hotel in Los Angeles back in 2016, it's tough to watch. It's Diddy in just a towel assaulting his then girlfriend Cassie Ventura right there in the hallway. It's graphic and it's disturbing.
And that footage is so central to everything because it seems to directly support the claims that Ventura made in her lawsuit. She said that Diddy was intoxicated, that he punched her, gave her a black eye, and then attacked her physically when she tried to leave the room.
And the video, I mean, it's brutal. He throws her on the ground, he's kicking her, he tries to drag her back into the room, and at one point it looks like he even throws something at her.
And you know what's so important about this? Diddy's lawyer originally said that her claims were totally baseless, that they were outrageous lies. So then that raises the question, why was the lawsuit settled so fast if her claims were so unfounded? This video, I mean, it really changes the whole story, doesn't it?
For sure. And it makes you think, what else is out there, right? I mean,
Right.
the lawsuit was settled out of court. We know Diddy didn't admit to anything. Neither side can talk about the details publicly.
Which is totally normal for settlements like this. But it does leave you with a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
You have to think about how much power Diddy has and how much pressure Ventura might have been under to just accept the settlement, you know? Especially with her claims being immediately shut down like they were.
Her lawyer even said that the video was further confirmation of Diddy's disturbing and predatory behavior. I mean, those are pretty strong words. But this 2016 incident, it's just one part of a much bigger thing, isn't it? There's a whole federal investigation going on now focusing on sex trafficking and sexual abuse.
Right, and now it gets way more serious. We're not just talking about the local police anymore. Now you have a whole team that's dedicated to investigating human trafficking,
Yeah.
and they searched Diddy's homes in Los Angeles and Miami. So, they're not messing around. They're taking this really seriously.
And the allegations themselves are really bad. I mean, you have multiple lawsuits saying that Diddy hosted these violent and degrading sex parties. There are accusations of drugging, beatings, rape, even that he filmed everything. I mean, it's just hard to even imagine.
These accusations are very serious, and they have to be fully investigated. And the fact that they're coming from multiple different people makes it even more complicated. I mean, it's a picture that's really hard to line up with Diddy's image, his public image.
Right. And of course, he's denied everything. He said it's all just attempts to get a quick payday. But here's the thing. None of his famous friends have said anything publicly to support him since these allegations came out. You'd think with all his connections, at least a few people would be speaking up for him by now.
Yeah, it's like this deafening silence. You really have to wonder if it means that something's changing in the entertainment industry. Maybe there's less tolerance for just ignoring these things when serious accusations are made.
So in the CNN report, they brought in this expert, Julie K. Brown. You might remember her from her work on the Jeffrey Epstein case. And she pointed out some really unsettling similarities between what Diddy's being accused of and what happened with Epstein. I mean, both cases involve these accusations of abuse and exploitation, and it's all happening in these super rich, super powerful circles.
And that comparison, it definitely raises red flags. Now, of course, it's important to remember these are separate cases, and the accusations against Diddy are still being investigated. But you can't just ignore the possibility that there might be similar patterns of abuse happening within these elite groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the biggest question is, will investigators find evidence that Diddy was actually involved in sex trafficking of minors?
So it's important to understand the legal side of all this. The CNN report talked about how in California, the statute of limitations for simple assault is only 1 year. And for domestic violence assault, it was 3 years back when that incident with Ventura happened, although now it's been extended to 5 years.
Okay, so since that hotel thing was in 2016, you're saying Diddy can't be charged for that specific assault, like at the state level?
Right, exactly. For those specific charges, the time limit has passed. But that footage could still be important for the federal investigation that's going on right now.
The CNN report also brought up this thing about a possible IRCO case. That's the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, right? I think a lot of people have probably heard that term but don't really know what it means. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. A RIR case is basically this powerful tool that prosecutors use to go after organized crime. It's not about going after each individual crime, but about taking down the whole criminal organization, like taking down the whole operation, not just a few people. So if investigators can show that there's a pattern of behavior, and that pattern includes things like human trafficking, then they could try to bring an area or case against Diddy.
Okay, that makes sense. And remember how Diddy's lawyer, Ben Brafman, at first said that Ventura's accusations were baseless, that they were outrageous lies? The report even mentioned that Brafman said Ventura tried to blackmail Diddy for $30 million.
And that's why that video is so important. It totally goes against what Brafman was saying and supports Ventura's story. It makes you question why they settled so quickly and if they were really trying to discredit her.
Right. And if you take a step back and look at the big picture, this goes way beyond just Diddy. It really shows how difficult it can be for survivors of abuse to come forward, especially when they're going up against someone so powerful and influential.
That's a really good point. This case really highlights those power imbalances. Think about it. Ventura, like a lot of survivors, probably felt like she had no choice but to settle. I mean, who wants to go through a long legal battle with someone as rich and powerful as Diddy?
And you can't ignore the fact that all of Diddy's famous friends are silent about this. Could it be that something is changing in Hollywood? That maybe people are starting to realize that they need to hold abusers accountable no matter how famous or connected they are?
It's possible. There have been a lot of changes in Hollywood lately, and this can be another one. It's going to be interesting to see how this case affects things moving forward. Will more survivors feel like they can come forward? Will people start looking more closely at people in power? This story isn't over yet.
One thing that really stood out to me was the hotel security staff. The lawsuit says that they saw the assault, told Ventura to just go home, and then took $50,000 from Diddy in exchange for that security footage. If that's true, that's pretty messed up.
Oh yeah, if that's true, it brings up some serious ethical and legal problems for the hotel. It's not just that they didn't stop the assault. It sounds like they might have helped cover it up. And it makes you wonder, how many other times did something like this happen and no one ever found out because of this arrangement?
The legal expert on CNN also said that there might be even more video evidence out there. I mean, these things didn't just happen at that one hotel, right?
Exactly. If investigators can find more footage from other places, it could really help their case. Imagine if there were multiple videos that all supported the accusations.
There's been a lot of talk comparing this case to Jeffrey Epstein. What do you think about that? Are those comparisons fair?
I think you have to be careful with comparisons, but it's hard to ignore the similarities. Both cases involve accusations of abuse and exploitation, and it's all happening in these really closed-off elite circles. These are places where money and power seem to protect people from consequences. It shows that justice shouldn't depend on how rich or famous someone is.
Yeah. The CNN expert really focused on one question for investigators. Can they prove that Diddy was involved in sex trafficking of minors?
That's the big one. If they find evidence that Diddy was trafficking minors, it completely changes the situation. The charges become way more serious, it's a whole other level of crime, and the penalties are much tougher. It's really important to remember that sexual assault and sex trafficking are not the same thing. Sex trafficking is about exploiting people, including children, for commercial sex.
This whole situation is a mess. So many things going on. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few months.
I think it brings up this really important question for all of us. How do we make sure that justice is served, no matter how rich or famous someone is? How do we create a system where survivors feel safe coming forward? These are things that go beyond just this one case.
And it's important to remember that the accusations against Diddy aren't only about physical abuse. There are also claims of emotional and psychological manipulation, which can be just as damaging, if not more so.
Absolutely. We hear a lot about coercive control these days, and it's a big part of a lot of abusive relationships. It's basically using a pattern of behaviors to control your partner, like isolating them from their friends and family, controlling their money, always putting them down. It can really mess someone up in the long run.
The CNN report talked about how Diddy would allegedly film people during sex without their consent and would even tell his staff to set things up in really degrading ways.
I mean, if that's true, it's really disturbing. It's like he doesn't even see people as human beings. It makes you think this wasn't just a one-time thing. It could be part of a much bigger problem.
This whole case has started a lot of conversations online with people arguing about the accusations, about what the media is saying, and what it all means for the music industry.
I think it's a situation where we have to be careful. We can't deny how serious these accusations are, and there's definitely a chance that there are bigger problems in the entertainment industry. But we also have to remember that Diddy has the right to be treated fairly by the legal system.
It feels like this whole thing is a turning point, for Diddy, obviously, but for the music industry, too. It makes us think about how power works in these situations and how we react when someone accuses someone powerful of abuse.
Yeah. This story is far from over, and the conversation it started is just as important as what happens in court. It makes us question what we believe. It challenges how things are. It makes us stand up for a culture where survivors can come forward and where justice actually means something no matter how rich or powerful someone is.
Thinking about everything we've talked about today, what really sticks out to you? What's the thing that you just can't get out of your head?
For me, it's how different Diddy's public image is from what these accusations are saying. Like, it shows you that we can't always believe what we see. We have to think critically, question everything, and be willing to dig deeper, especially when it comes to power and privilege.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. It's complicated, it's tough, and it brings up so many questions about responsibility, justice, and how the entertainment industry can make things better or worse. If you had to pick one takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
I think it comes down to this. Regardless of what happens with this case, it should make us talk about how we as a society deal with abuse and exploitation. We need to listen to survivors. We need to challenge bad behavior. And we need to hold people in power accountable. We need to create a world where everyone feels safe and respected, and where justice isn't about how rich or famous you are.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? What can you take from this deep dive and think about in your own life?
I think it reminds us that we all have a part to play in making a more just and fair world. It starts with being informed, having real conversations, and looking at our own biases. It's about speaking up when we see something wrong, supporting survivors, and demanding better from people in power.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll keep looking into this issue. What questions do you have? What parts of this case need more attention? This is a really complicated situation with a lot of consequences, and the conversation isn't over yet. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.